Now, how about this as a new holiday destination? Greenland. An international airport will soon open in the capital, Nuuk, allowing larger aircraft to land there and paving the way for direct flights from the US from the first time. Officials hope this will boost the local economy by making the Arctic territory more accessible than ever before. Andrew Peach spoke to Michael Binzer, chair of the board at Polar Seafoods, the largest privately owned fishing company operating in Greenland. So what will this airport mean, first of all, for business?
I think it opens up a ton of opportunities for Greenland. Basically, we are going from being a remote area to being an Arctic hub where you have access from anywhere in the world. And we just see the impact of new routes going into Nuuk. Like United Airlines just announced that they were actually going to open a route next summer. So it's going to open a ton of opportunities for Greenland.
And your company, Polar Seafoods, you catch prawns, you steam and shell them, and there's also shrimp and crab and halibut. And it presumably opens up new markets for those products.
What we primarily do right now with the logistic we have in place is frozen products, primarily shipped to Asia. Of course, we also have UK as a pretty big market, but less after you left the EU. But it opens up a new market for the fresh kind of seafood.
And it strikes me it's actually going to have quite an impact on Greenland as a place, because not only will it mean more international business opportunities for companies like yours, but also it'll mean many more people coming to Greenland, which is in a way good for the economy, but also will totally change the nature of it.
Yeah, it's a two-edged sword. On one hand, you have a ton of opportunities also, as you say, in tourism growth and in interconnectivity and being closer to the world and also have a different outlook to the world for the people living in Greenland, going from a remote place to a more kind of like interconnected world. But at the same time also represents a lot of challenges in terms that the development might go a little bit too fast. We've seen that, especially in the Faroe Islands, where we've seen tourism almost took over in at least the last 5 years, and also gives some different impact on the nature. And we have very delicate nature in the Arctic.
UNESCO has chosen 2 places in Africa, one in Cameroon, one in Malawi, as World Heritage Sites to try to boost the continent's representation on the list. Rachel Wright has the details.
The Digid B landscape of the Mandara Mountains in the far north of Cameroon are the ruins of dry stone round structures thought to have been built between the 12th and the 17th centuries by the ancestors of the Mafa people. They're surrounded by agricultural terraces and sites of worship. The new addition to UNESCO's list had been joined by Mount Mulanje, the highest peak in Malawi, considered by locals to be sacred. Being deemed a World Heritage Site often leads to lucrative tourism drives and can unlock funding. UNESCO says it's trying to increase the number of African sites on the World Heritage List.
Here's a question I've often pondered. Why are people so keen to board an aeroplane quickly? Yes, some are hoping to find a good spot to stash their hand luggage. But it often seems that everyone wants to be in their seat as soon as possible, with their legs squashed, their elbows pulled in, and quite possibly a screaming baby next to them. And this rush is a problem for airlines. The staff try to get passengers to board in clear order, but instead they all seem to pile in at once, as if they're worried the plane might take off without them. Now, however, one airline thinks it's got a solution to this. Ella Bicknell has been investigating.
Your attention, please. Passengers for flight KR125 to London.
So you've made it to the airport. You've checked in, got through security, passed through duty-free to find your gate, and there it is. A big long queue of people, also waiting to board the plane. It's a frustration for passengers, but also for airlines. Airplanes only make money when they're, well, in the air. So the quicker providers make the boarding process, reducing that turnaround time, the more revenue they can generate. In fact, a recent study from the University of Hamburg found that for every minute a plane is delayed, it can cost the airline as much as $250. If you're operating more than 6,800 flights a day, like American Airlines, that is a huge problem. So how do you speed up the process? Do you let people board the plane at random or back to front? United Airlines encourages its passengers with window seats to board before others. However, the most common method is to board in groups, prioritising first class and business class passengers. American Airlines have gone one step further. to stop what they call gate lice. That's passengers who cause delays by boarding before their designated group is called. They've introduced a new technology. If a passenger attempts to scan their ticket before their turn, an audible and potentially embarrassing alarm will be emitted. Staff will be alerted and passengers will be sent back in the queue. So far, American Airlines have tested out the technology in Albuquerque, New Mexico and Tucson, Arizona, with plans to roll it out at Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C. They say the new system not only addresses the frustrations of passengers, but also enhances the overall travel experience.
Ella Bicknell reporting.
Picturesque coastal town of Portofino, known for its pastel-coloured houses and luxury boutiques, has issued a long list of banned activities as it grapples with huge numbers of tourists. Those flouting the rules could be fined up to €500. Will Leonardo reports.
For those planning to dip their feet in the Mediterranean this summer, be sure to put your sandals back on promptly if you're in Portofino. Town officials, bothered by uncouth tourists, are threatening hefty fines for anyone found walking barefoot or bare-chested, having a picnic or drinking alcohol in public. Portofino says it wants to ensure peace and quiet for its few hundred well-heeled residents, who, as elsewhere in Italy, appear to be finding the country's massive international popularity a tad tiresome. But the push towards genteel respectability has also targeted those without means. Begging or just sitting or lying on the streets will also now incur a fine.
Will Leonardo. For decades, people in Western nations have protested about the rising numbers of immigrants arriving on their shores. But there's a growing backlash in a number of popular tourist destinations against Westerners and gentrification that's pricing locals out of their own neighbourhoods. In recent weeks, there have been several demonstrations in Mexico City, with at least one of them turning ugly as boutique stores and coffee shops were attacked and foreigners intimidated on the streets, with some protesters even yelling "Gringos out." Will Grant reports from the Mexican capital.
The timing of the anti-gentrification protest in Mexico City was no coincidence. The 4th of July, US Independence Day. It began as a peaceful march over aggressive rent hikes, unregulated holiday lettings, and the endless influx of Americans and Europeans into the capital's trendy neighbourhoods of La Condesa and Roma. But it soon descended into violence. Radical demonstrators attacked coffee shops and boutique stores aimed at tourists, smashing their windows and spraying graffiti while chanting "Fuera gringo," meaning gringos out.
Las muestras xenofóbicas de esa manifestación hay que condenarlas.
In a press conference 2 days later, President Claudia Sheinbaum, who'd previously served as the mayor of Mexico City, condemned the protest as xenophobic.
No puede ser que por una demanda, por más legítima que sea, que es la gentrificación.
No matter how legitimate the cause, as with gentrification, the demand can never be to just say "get out" to people of other nationalities inside our country, she said. Her administration would support the mayor, Clara Brugada, in tackling the issue, she added.
Damos la bienvenida a la jefa de gobierno en la Ciudad de México, licenciada Clara Brugada Molina.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días a todas.
Mayor Brugada then set out a 14-point plan to regulate rent prices, protect long-term residents, and build new social housing at affordable prices. For many, though, the mayor's promises came too late. Activist Sergio González says in the past decade his group has recorded more than 4,000 cases of forced displacement of long-term residents from his neighbourhood of La Juárez alone. He was one of them.
We are definitely facing what we call an urban war. What's in dispute is the ground itself. Who does and who doesn't have rights to this ground? The first apartment I rented here cost around 4,000 pesos a month in 2007. Today, that same apartment costs more than 10 times as much. It's an outrage. It's pure speculation.
The Juárez, Roma and Condesa are now so changed in character that they're almost unrecognisable to some of the original residents. Trendy coffee shops, high-end restaurants and boutique clothing stores And the growing complaint is that the original character of so many of these communities is being lost in the endless pursuit of the foreigner earning in dollars, euros or pounds. The violence of the anti-gentrification protests sparked headlines across Mexico. Branches of Starbucks and banks being smashed up made for images of a sort of anti-American class war unfolding on the capital's streets. But for displaced resident Erika Aguilar, the radical demonstrators and agitators don't represent her cause. Still, she has advice to anyone planning to relocate to Mexico City: learn Spanish and pay your taxes.
That report by Will Grant. The Stethoscope.
Russia. Here in Britain, the streets of West London have been filled with thousands of people for the first day of the annual Notting Hill Carnival, one of the largest street festivals in Europe. The event, taking place across the weekend and on Monday, is a celebration of Caribbean culture featuring brightly coloured outfits, brass instruments, steel drums and dancing. But there have been concerns about policing and public safety. Our correspondent Greg Mackenzie sent this report from Notting Hill on Sunday's events.
The first day of the Notting Hill Carnival is traditionally known as Children's Day, where many compete for the title of Best Costume.
We get to celebrate our different cultures from Africa, the Caribbean, all over, and we get to have fun and celebrate what's important.
And what's been your favourite part of Carnival?
Watching the fancy dress.
Notting Hill Carnival!
The carnival, which began in the late 50s as a celebration of Caribbean culture and resilience, continues to serve as both a cultural showcase and a unifying community event. Food stalls line the streets, offering everything from jerk chicken to doubles. By the end of tomorrow, more than 2 million people will have taken to the Notting Hill Carnival. This year, it's 59 years old. The Metropolitan Police are using live facial recognition cameras at key points for the first time. The technology scans crowds in real time, matching faces against a watch list of individuals wanted for serious offences.
The aim is to obviously keep people safe, is to make sure that we're looking at preventing serious violence, particularly around knife crime and violence against women and girls.
For many Londoners, the Carnival is more than a party. It's a symbol of multicultural Britain, celebrating identity, history and belonging.
Greg Mackenzie in Notting Hill in West London.
Listeners are retiring to Thailand because they're fed up with poor quality or expensive care homes in their own countries. Gideon Long has been to Thailand to find out if this is a model of care that works, and if so, could it be exported to the rest of the world?
10 elderly people are sitting, lifting their arms, stretching their legs, following the instructor's routine. A couple of them are in wheelchairs. Some look very frail, others less so. After the class, I wander around the resort. Well, there's no denying it is a beautiful place. I'm standing in front of the lake here with fountains playing in it. There are tropical plants everywhere, palm trees and some incredible flowers. The accommodation here consists of bungalows. Some of them are overlooking the lake with lovely verandas on them, and all of it nestled in the lush green hills that surround Chiang Mai.
Hi.
I meet Lynn Stewart. Lynn's 81 years old. She's from the US and lived there and in Northern Europe for many years before moving to Thailand.
There was a time when I just got fed up with the weather, and I looked for sunshine, butterflies and flowers and year-round beauty. I came here and I thought I'd give it 6 months. 5 years later and I'm still here. It's so much more reasonable than the United States, and you get the most exchange for your dollar.
Do you go back to the US at all now?
Everything I need is here. I really have nothing that I absolutely can't find in Thailand.
It's a sentiment echoed by other residents.
My name is Liz Jackson and I'm 83 years old.
Liz has been here for a year.
I'd already been in a care home in the UK. I had a knee operation done and it was okay. But I just thought, I don't want to die here. I really, really did.
For many retirees, cost is a big factor in the decision to move to Thailand. Liz tells me she pays $1,800 a month for her care, a quarter of what she was paying in the UK.
And that's your food, your cleaning, your laundry. Everything is done for you.
This is not all about money, though.
The Buddhist culture is very interesting.
Peter Millard is another British pensioner at the resort.
There's very little anger. You never hear people shouting. People are extremely gentle and kind, and particularly to the elderly.
But, of course, not all elderly people are as healthy as Lynn, Liz and Peter.
Okay, put your right hand on your left hand.
I visit another care facility, also in Chiang Mai. This is the Vivo Care Dementia Facility. I spoke to one of Vivo Care's Swiss owners, Roger Holzer.
I remember when we started, we had one new guest per year. Now, on average, we get a new guest every 3 to 4 weeks. So it has dramatically accelerated.
Could it work elsewhere in the world?
The next facility we are, I hope, going to open is in Kenya and Morocco and Namibia.
Dr. Caleb Johnston has researched the private sector care system in Thailand.
Many of these facilities are only able to offer what they can offer because of the abundance of cheap care labor. Is it better for care workers to migrate overseas and be separated from their children for 5-10 years?
And what is the impact on the local and particularly the public health service in Thailand itself?
One of the big critiques of medical migration is that all these private hospitals, they are draining resources away, investment, nurses, doctors, care assistants, equipment from the clinics and hospitals that are desperately needed by the national population. That is a real concern.
Dr. Caleb Johnston, ending that report by Gideon Long. The UK's National Weather Service, the Met Office.
Travelling is good for us. There is a saying that travel broadens the mind. A new study says that going on trips could slow down the ageing process. The travel bug could be one hobby that is healthy. Researchers from Edith Cowan University in Australia said travelling could make us look and feel younger. They said having different experiences and meeting new people could make us more youthful as we get older. Fang Li Hu, lead author of the research, said, "Tourism isn't just about leisure and recreation. It could also contribute to people's physical and mental health." Ms. Hu added, "Aging as a process is irreversible. While it can't be stopped, it can be slowed down." The researchers looked at how travelling might affect how we age. They suggested that going on vacations, backpacking, and sightseeing can lower stress. Going on trips can also boost our metabolism, which strengthens our immune system. Travel could also help repair body tissue. This helps to slow down the signs of aging. Ms. Hu said travelling often involves physical activities like hiking, climbing and cycling. She said these potentially reduce tension and fatigue in the muscles and joints. She added, "Participating in these activities could enhance the body's immune function and self-defense capabilities." The researchers said travelling could be better than anti-aging creams. The list includes a visit to London's Tin Pan Alley, famed for its music history, and a tour of Hokkaido, Japan, renowned for the unique heritage of its indigenous Ainu people. For nature lovers, exploring Namibia's Caprivi Strip is recommended for its abundance of natural wildlife.
For more than 500 years, the indigenous people of northern Colombia have lived in relative isolation, with visitors sometimes seen as unwelcome outsiders. But a new initiative is allowing these tribes to benefit from the money brought in by foreign travellers. It's an example of what's known as ethno-tourism, which encourages visitors to respect local communities while exploring and understanding their cultures. Sophie Smith has been to meet some of those involved.
walking up the Sierra Nevada, and on the left there are mountains, on the right there are mountains. I'm quite out of breath because it's a very steep walk.
In northern Colombia, small groups of Western tourists trek for 4 days to reach the Lost City, nestled in the mountains of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. Here, 1,200 metres above sea level, the Arhuaca, Wiwa, Kogi and Cancuamos make their homes. This land has not always been recognised as their territory, though. For centuries, the tribes have suffered at the hands of colonisers, guerrilla soldiers and drug traffickers. But the Sierra Nevada, like the rest of Colombia, is changing, and so-called ethnotourism is playing its part. Jose Benjamin Gutierrez Villafana is an Arhuacan guide who works for Wiwa Tours, the first and only tour operator to be entirely owned and operated by indigenous people in these mountains.
La historia de Colombia es una historia de mucho conflicto.
The history of Colombia is a history with a lot of conflict, riddled with war and drug trafficking. For example, in this village, everyone used to work on drug farms or in drug labs. Now the people are tour guides. They're chefs for tour groups. This is a proper tourism, an indigenous tourism. It's totally different when we talk about ourselves. So it's telling our history, our past, our present, and also what we see in our future.
Lo que vemos en el futuro.
Tourism has not only brought employment and protection to the people, but also to the biodiversity of the region. For the Arhuacans, the Sierra Nevada is the heart of the world. They believe it's their duty to protect the land from the people who come to exploit its rich minerals, and tourism allows them to show its beauty and its worth to others.
La Sierra Nevada
The Sierra Nevada, above all, is a unique mountain in all of the world. For us, the Arhuaca, it has minerals that are like a person. Mother Earth has gold, petrol, minerals, like an organ of our bodies. So if we take these minerals, after time we will destroy everything. We'll destroy the rivers, we'll destroy everything. I think it's very important for others to come and learn about Mother Earth, the mother of nature, and how important it is to protect nature.
While the Sierra Nevada has seen great progress, there are still changes to be made. A new government scheme uses government resources to buy back land currently owned by non-indigenous people on the mountain and return it.
This scheme allows the people to move to the lower parts of the mountain and gives them the guarantee they'll be able to remain here where they belong. For my part, I'm always very happy to meet new people every day on this trek. It's very important for me to be able to meet you and to share the experience with you. You're taking our words, our history to somewhere in the world I would never be able to visit. But for me, it's very moving to be able to share it with you and know that you will share the history of our land.
That report by Sophie Smith. Now to a...
Earlier in the Happy Pod, we were talking about rare and unusual languages. Australia used to be one of the most linguistically diverse places, with over 200 languages, but today many of them are considered highly endangered. Enter Gilad Zuckerman, a Hebrew-speaking linguistics professor who's on a mission to help indigenous communities reclaim their mother tongues. Gilad has painstakingly pieced back together the dormant language of Bangla, which was spoken in South Australia, before presenting his work to the indigenous community for approval. Among them, Shania Richards. So where did Gilad begin?
I had a dictionary written in 1844 with up to 3,500 words, which is a lot.
Narnara. He revelled in the delights of this language.
Ra. Wari. Munidi Gamangudu.
Gilad refers to Bangla as a sleeping beauty.
So I asked 5 representatives of the Bangla tribe to come to my office, and I told these 5 Bangla representatives, I have found enough material to reclaim your dreaming, sleeping beauty. Are you interested? Their response changed my life because they told me, and I quote, "We have been waiting for you for 50 years.
The wait was over. Just a few months later, they planned the first language workshop with Gilad and members of the community.
The entire night, I was working like a dog, preparing songs, including the head, shoulders, knees and toes in Bangla. Gaga, wiri, bura, idna. Gaga, wiri, bura, idna.
Gilad's approach is for the community to be in charge of the revival of their language.
I need to make it clear. The Aboriginal people are at the wheel. They're the ones who have to approve of any decision that I make. In fact, I don't make decisions, I make recommendations.
I remember the first time I met Professor Gilad. He was the one that really helped us heaps with our language revival.
When Shania was a teenager and struggling with her mental health, she went to a newly set up Bangla Community Centre.
I was so spun out because it was like he was one of those heroes from the books that came around. They were like, hey, you're allowed to be yourself.
She went to a Bangla language workshop, learning songs in the language and reading books.
It was like he understood and he saw how much we needed to find this so that we can find ourselves again, not only just as individuals, but as a collective and hopefully for the whole community.
For Shania, there's no question about the impact it's had for her.
Coming back to find my people again, my culture and my language, it was literally like I found myself through language again. Because now I feel like I have a purpose, even if it's as simple as being able to learn a new Bangla word per day.
Shania has come a really long way since she was a teenager, and she's now an elected politician in the region. She's also writing a book of Bangla poems and wants to record an album of Bangla songs. But for Shania, the biggest difference is in how she sees herself.
Oh my gosh, I never used to be able to look at myself in the mirror, and now when I look in the mirror and now I actually like what I see. Like, I see me smiling, I see my beautiful skin, I see my beautiful curly hair, and yeah, that has been a real transformation for me to now actually being the person I've always dreamed of becoming.
Shania Richards ending that report by Josephine Casserly.
Anyone who's used public transport to get around London will be familiar with the somewhat confusing Underground or Tube map. Originally designed in 1933, it turned the tangle of train routes into a neat diagram of coloured, crisscrossing lines. But now a new version has gone viral, as Owen T.J. Smith reports.
Mind the gap.
For many people, it's not the awkward step off the train that makes it hard to get around London, but the awkward layout of the Tube map. The familiar linear map for the city's underground is based on a design by Henry Beck more than 90 years ago. Its purpose is to show people where the stations are in relation to each other, rather than their actual geographical locations. But this can mean stations that are within a few minutes' walk of each other seem really far apart. I've been speaking to a psychology lecturer at the University of Essex in England, who also happens to be a map collector and enthusiast.
The TfL map doesn't simplify reality, it's not particularly coherent, it's not balanced, and it's geographically, there's some really weird stuff happening on that. You look at parts of the map, you think, hang on a minute, it's not just things moved around a little bit in relation to each other. There's things which are so crazy out of place.
So Max Roberts designed his own version of the London Tube map using a series of colour-coded circles rather than lines. And within 24 hours of posting it on social media, over 1 million people had seen it. He told me he took inspiration from a map in the back of a Paris guidebook based on concentric ovals, but his main motivation was to illustrate how a map can teach us about the shape of a city, something that can't necessarily be done through modern GPS technology.
As soon as you start relying on the computer, you don't learn about where everything is for yourself anymore. And the other problem with computer software is it's good at answering a question like, I'm at A and I need to get to B, but it's terrible at answering a question like, I'm at A, I've got an hour to spare, and what can I do instead? So you get the map out and you think, oh, that's nearby. I could pop down to Waterloo and look at the South Bank for a bit or something like that. Maps are good for that.
Transport for London say the original tube map is an iconic piece of world-renowned design and that there are no plans to change it. So, at least for now, it seems navigating around London won't have you going around in circles.
You may remember a few weeks ago we told you about a seagull that had been banned.
Attend.
Acapulco in Mexico was once a big tourist destination, but with a rapid increase in violence, those days are gone. Now, 10 people have been found murdered just days before elections. I've been speaking to our Mexico correspondent, Will Grant.
The most grisly killings were of 2 women and 4 men. That was near a market. Now, there's disputes over exact numbers, but at least 3 others were killed in a separate shooting in a neighbourhood late at night. That may have actually been 4 deaths, according to local media. And then there was another incident in the tourist part of town, which adds either another 1 or 2 more bodies. So the final total in a 24-hour period is either 10 or 12 deaths. It is a shocking day of violence in Acapulco, but ultimately not that uncommon. So it is a very, very dangerous period in the city's history.
And Will, help me with the change there, because Acapulco is associated with glamour, with tourism. It's depicted in movies and songs and all that kind of thing. Why have things changed so much?
Well, I think it's sort of 1950s heyday is now a long, long time ago. Of course, it still has the image of this faded grandeur of a destination for the rich and famous, the association with Elvis and of stars of the 1950s and so on, Johnny Weissmuller. But in truth, Acapulco is situated in Guerrero, one of the most violent states in Mexico, and it is a place where cartel control is absolute in certain neighborhoods of Acapulco. Other parts of the state are in dispute, so there is violence involved in all of the key industries in which drug cartels are interested, whether or not that's obviously the drugs themselves, the movement of migrants, the trafficking of guns, the movement of money, even into the agricultural sector in that state, and the cartel involvement in the avocado industry, for example, the control of the ports to bring in precursor chemicals for the production of methamphetamine and of fentanyl. So yeah, it is an extremely difficult period in Guerrero and in Acapulco.
And there are elections coming up. From your description, security must be playing a big part in them.
Yeah, security is increasingly, one of the key issues in the election. It appeared in a big way in the last presidential debate, with, of course, opponents saying that the current government hasn't done enough under President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and therefore trying to attack his candidate, the candidate from his party, Claudia Sheinbaum, who's the front runner to become Mexico's first woman president. But the debate really circles around the role of the military. President López Obrador has put the entire fight in terms of the leading the security strategy in the hands of the military to a large extent. But he's also said that the concept should be hugs, not bullets, what they call abrazos y no balazos in Spanish.
Will Grant with me from Mexico.
Well, let's talk about some of the destinations that are really struggling with over-tourism.
Yep.
It's upsetting local people.
Yep.
But what are some of the cities, the destinations that you would say are being a bit crushed at the moment by too many people?
Barcelona is the one that I really had personal testimony of being there and seeing it change. And I went first before the Olympics. That was in 1992. The Olympics were a huge game changer. Basically, the whole city was gentrified. Well, not the whole city, but a lot of the city was gentrified. You had cruise liners coming in. You had a whole new redevelopment on the port area.
You opened up the city to the water, didn't it?
Exactly. You had a huge new beach. And the city completely transformed. And low-cost airlines, for example, were already taking people from Western countries there. But I think nobody really latched on to how amazing it was until the Olympics and then the development that happened during and after that. So since then, it's been relentless. Local people, and we did a story for the travel show that I work on. We did a story about locals complaining quite a long time ago, good 10, 12, 15 years ago. We did that story because it was brewing. There was a huge amount of resentment.
On a particularly crowded summer day, you would not be able to do much.
you would see the sweaty bodies of the people that are like pushing against you and being preyed upon by pickpockets and staring at the living statues, sometimes going into some like overpriced restaurant.
It's a historic area. It's got very narrow streets. So all you need is one big outpouring from a cruise liner coming in for 3 hours and the whole place gets jammed. The resentment as well was that these people were coming in for a day, not staying the night, therefore not spending much money, and just kind of causing huge amounts of congestion and then disappearing.
So the solution is always the same. If you are unhappy in the old city, just leave. You know, the problem is that I used to live here before all this happened and I don't want to leave.
It was for locals also worrying because the short-term rentals were rising. In other words, they were more and more available for the holidaymaker, which pushed up prices, which marginalised.
If you're a young local person living in Barcelona, you can't find a place to
you
rent.
Can't find
basically.
And this is the common thread, by the way. It's the edging out of local
Pricing
people.
out of locals.
Pricing out, precisely.
I mean, there's been these big protests in the Balearic Islands recently. What are some of the challenges they're facing there? Because that's an industry where they also need young people to work. They need waiting staff, they need bartender staff.
Absolutely.
They need people to work in the hotels.
Absolutely.
Where do they stay? Where do they live?
Well, I think there was a story on the BBC website not so long ago about, for example, a chef who works in a local hotel or restaurant who is forced to sleep in his car because he can't afford to live locally. I mean, we are talking, by the way, Ibiza, a population of 160,000. It gets 4 million visitors a year. And, however, the figure is 80% of the economy is based around tourism. So what do? I mean, this also applies to the Caribbean islands, for example, as well, where they are totally focused on tourism and they rely on people coming from afar to get there. But going back to Ibiza and Mallorca, yes, there have been huge demonstrations. It is about this sense of, I call it, feeling like extras in your own movie. A city that you love or an area that you love is completely taken over.
I mean, are they worried as well about the erosion of their own culture?
Exactly that.
Because with so many people, lots of people, I guess, speaking English in some cities as well, you hear less of the local language being spoken.
Yep.
The demands are for a more almost international experience sometimes. So.
Yeah, and obviously local customs get squashed because tourists want their thing. They think they want what they're used to, a nice latte, a nice little coffee shop.
I think you'll find it's a flat white.
A flat white, is it right? Food-wise, probably, there are some demanding tastes from tourists, and if they can afford it, they'll guess what? There'll be a restaurant for them there.
There's sort of this notion of international good taste, isn't it, that exists everywhere now, that can kind of muscle out things that are local. What about Austria? You had, I know, an amazing trip to Hallstatt.
There is this little village in Austria, about 40 kilometres away from Salzburg. It's called Hallstatt.
Which is Sound of Music territory. And obviously, in itself, a huge draw. I've done a Sound of Music tour. I have to
Have you? Was it good?
It was fantastic. I loved it.
Did you go up in the hills?
Yeah, I ran across the hills singing The Hills Are Alive.
What were you wearing?
No, just jeans and a T-shirt, I think, but still.
So not Julie Andrews. But here in Hallstatt, it's not dissimilar in some ways. It's a little town, 800 residents. It's got a beautiful lake. I mean, it's picture postcard perfect. It's just beautiful. Lovely mountainside in the background. Lovely, beautiful architecture. But 800 residents, and they have, during peak season, 10,000 guests a day. Now, that's because one is an urban myth that people are drawn there, and that is the town is based on Arendelle, which is the town in the Disney film Frozen. So while I was there, I met a mother who was from South Korea, I think, and she had her 2 little daughters with her. They were dressed
as Elsa.
Exactly. And it was cute, and they were there for that reason, and they didn't actually care if Arendelle was based on that or not. I mean, apparently it's not, but there you go.
My name is Mi Jung Kang, and I came with my 2 daughters, 4 and 6 years old. Many friends told me that Hallstatt is so beautiful, so I really wanted to come here. And then they have a spring break, so I wanted to show them. And they are fan of Frozen, the movie Frozen. So they dress like a princess now.
Yeah, they look very pretty.
Yeah, I'm trying to take picture of them with with beautiful scenery.
It is actually featured, or has been featured, in a South Korean soap opera. So therefore, it actually is in reality based in somewhere And it's got to the point where in China, apparently, there is a life-size replica of Hallstatt, which is astonishing.
So, Raj, what is life like for those 800
exactly.
residents?
That's the point.
Who live there?
And so I talked to one resident who's an urban architect, lives up in the hills, and he was bemoaning the fact that basically they're walking through gardens taking selfies while residents are having coffee in their garden. They are in the graveyard taking selfies. There's one particular scenic spot where you can get such a perfect selfie with the lake in the background that the locals, or the mayor in fact, tried to block it for a while.
People who live here say the tourists start coming at 7 in the morning up till 11 at night. There are hundreds and thousands of people going up there. It's difficult to sleep and it's loud and it's noisy. And they were feeling they just can't go on like that. So we said, if you want a fence, we can do that. And that's what we did. We put up a fence, a barrier, so you couldn't see the view from that point. But then people said, that's not actually what we want, because it not only prevents tourists from taking pictures, but it also prevents us from seeing the town. So it was only up there for 2 days, and then we took it back down again. And that exploded. It was on social media and TV stations all over the world. I mean, we do try to tell tourists that other places are also beautiful. Please don't come to Hallstatt all the time. But I don't think they really listen.
But that policy, it's catching. That policy was taken up on Mount Fuji not so long ago, where they did the same thing. They stopped people from taking pictures of Mount Fuji from just in front of a convenience store because it was.
This is Fujikawa Guchiko.
Very well said, yes.
Our correspondent, Shaima Khalil, actually went there.
You've probably seen this on your Instagram or TikTok. This is the famous Mount Fuji Lawson, the social media money shot for millions of visitors. But it's not going to be around for long.
Residents here in Fujikawa Guchiko are fed up with tourists behaving badly, all to get the perfect shot of the convenience store with the snow-capped volcano. As a desperate measure, the local authorities are building a barrier to block the view. You can get a picture of Mount Fuji from many places, but social media has become a big pull for this particular spot.
How many of those 800 residents, Raj, actually work in tourism and benefit directly from all of these people coming in?
That's a very good point. I spoke to the local there, and he said only 20% of people who live there actually work in tourism there. There is a fair sizable amount of people who are retired. There are other people who just live, work in other industries, and so therefore they're not all directly benefiting from tourism.
So they have a dream of retirement, that they're living in this beautiful place, they can have their coffee in the sunshine in the garden, and before you know it, they've got tourists sort of trampling through, taking photos of them as they're sitting there.
Not very much money in some of these places stays in those places. The local authorities will say, yes, we're reinvesting money that we get from parking, whatever, into local facilities and resources, but actually a lot of it isn't. That's called leakage, by the way, where a lot of the money that is made in these tourist centres actually doesn't stay within the economy. In many destinations, water is a big issue. I mean, I've talked to somebody who's in Kenya, where quite often you'll get luxury tourists pretty well competing with locals for water when there is scarcity. Guess who wins? The luxury hotels. Local farmers in Kenya and in other places are very suspicious of tourism because it actually can get in the way of them doing their job. It's the ecosystem, it's the environment. So yes, the ecological damage is huge.
So we've looked at where in the world is struggling with the impact of over-tourism, but next we want to explore the solutions. Is there anything we can do about it?
Are travel guides making a comeback? Apparently, publishers of them around the world saw 95% of their revenues disappear during the COVID pandemic, when there were widespread travel restrictions. There were even reports that Google planned to end the print run of the revered Frommer's Guides in the US. But Frommer's was bought back by its founder, and now guidebook revenues are returning to pre-pandemic levels. Julian Warwicker spoke to Tony Wheeler, co-founder of another guidebook brand, Lonely Planet. So, do travellers still want to hold a book in their hand as they explore new places?
I think, these days people have many different ways of gathering the information they want. And, we all know about, using the various internet sources. And guidebooks, even when they're the solid form rather than the ephemeral form, it can be print or digital. It isn't a question of just being one thing. And people are taking the solid guidebook back into use again, which I think is terrific.
Why? I mean, is it possible to trace that resurgence and where it comes from?
I think some of it is that a guidebook is completely dependable. You're never out of range. The batteries never go flat. If you drop it in the river, you can fish it out and dry the pages off, and it will still work. So there is that element of it. And 2 places I've been just in the last couple of months. I've been in Nigeria and I've been in South Sudan. Both places were not places where your internet connection was always really good. And I found the old-fashioned guidebook really worked there. The physical guide, it's had a long history, and I certainly see that in 2 ways. One is talking to Lonely Planet writers, even though I really have no connection with Lonely Planet anymore. I sold out, I'm long gone, but I do still see quite a lot of the writers. And one of the things they were saying, even a year or so ago, was that people buying the guidebooks, they want to know that it was researched post-pandemic. There's a real fear, when was that done? But this is true of the things on the internet. We sort of feel, it's on screen, it must be today. It certainly is not. You can find lots of things on the internet that are very, very much out of date.
In the sort of creation of the guidebook of today, how conscious are those creators of the apps, of everything else that's available, and thereby adjusting what they offer to try and make it slightly different?
Oh, look, absolutely they are. And I think there are many things, you wouldn't think of. I mean, if I want to find out what time the flight goes, I go online for it. I don't look up in a guidebook which tells me there are 3 flights a week or 3 flights a day, which we used to do, of course, because that was the only way to provide that information. So it really does vary on what you're looking for. But both things have a place.
I mean, the good ones as well, in my mind, when I've used them a lot over the years, is when you get the sense that the person who's written it absolutely lives and breathes this country that he or she is talking about. And that's something you can't necessarily get.
That is 100% correct. That so many of the writers, I am just so impressed with people's involvement with the places they write about. They've spent time there. They've studied it at university or something. They've lived it. They've lived the experience.
Tony Wheeler, co-founder of the Lonely Planet Guidebook. Let's return now to our top.
One country Italians moved to was Argentina. In 1898, Giuseppe Banchero arrived in the neighborhood of La Bocca, the Little Italy of Buenos Aires, where many Italian immigrants started restaurants. Here, Hugo Banchero, grandson of Giuseppe, tells his story to Veronica Smink, reporter for BBC World Service programme The Food Chain.
Well, my grandfather came from Italy, from Genoa, from Liguria. He was born in the center of Genoa and arrived here in 1898 at the age of 7.5. And this pizzeria where we are was founded on March 28, 1932. We have been here for 91 years.
So what culinary traditions did they bring with them?
Well, our culinary tradition is pizzeria, and we incorporated the faina from Genoa, which is a pizza with chickpea flour.
In 1898, Giuseppe founded his pizzeria, a restaurant selling pizza. When a business is founded, it's established. Someone starts it up or sets it up.
Giuseppe brought the culinary traditions from his home in Liguria in northern Italy, including regional pizzas like faina and forgazzetta. The adjective culinary describes anything connected with cooking.
But probably the best-known Little Italy in the world is an area of Manhattan's Lower East Side in New York. 90% of Italian immigrants who arrived in the US at the turn of the century came through this neighborhood.
De Palos, one of the original shops selling Italian food in Little Italy, has been serving customers for 113 years. Here, Lou De Palo, co-owner and great-grandson of the original owner Salvino, explains more about his family history to BBC World Service programme The Food Chain.
1925, when my grandmother, Conchetta, and my grandfather, Luigi, got married, they opened their own shop. It's the shop we continue today. Being the fourth generation, working alongside my sister Marie and my brother Sal, and our children, the fifth generation, our business has expanded to represent the full food culture of the 20 regions of Italy. Little Italy is the stepping stone of the Italian immigrant. This is where many of the Italians first came through Ellis Island and then settled here and then eventually moved into mainstream America throughout the rest of the country.
Lou DiPaolo is the fourth generation of his family to run the shop, and his children will be the fifth. Phrases like fourth or fifth generation describe the children of people whose parents immigrated to a particular country.
After arriving in New York, many Italian immigrants moved on to start successful new lives elsewhere. That's why Lou calls Little Italy a stepping stone, an experience that helps you achieve something else.
Now, you may or may not have seen the world's largest cruise ship yet. I've been looking online and it is extremely large indeed. It's been named the Icon of the Seas. Its owner, Royal Caribbean International, describes the liner as a game changer for vacations. It's due to set sail in Caribbean waters in January 2024. And James Reynolds spoke to Alex Rhodes, who's been on a sister ship to this new mammoth vessel.
What a beast, first of all. It's 250,000 tonnes, 365 metres long, 20 decks, 8 neighbourhoods, as they call it, areas, almost like, think of Disneyland, thing like that. Capacity of 5,600 passengers, 2,350 crew. It is a floating city, this thing.
It sounds almost a country.
Yeah, its biggest boast is that it's the largest water park at sea. So it's got 6 water slides, as well as 7 swimming pools, 9 whirlpools.
You've been on a similar ship.
So I was on the Mariner of the Seas, the same company that all their ships have Of the Seas on. It was maybe half the weight or something like that, and it was still the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was huge. Like, you see these things when you're on the beach and things like that in the distance. Only when they're close up at port do you get the sense of the scale of these things.
Did you need a map on board?
Yes. So one of the first things they do is kind of the orientation, where they sort of tell you this is where you go. I was on when I was 12 or 13 because we went on a family holiday and we got it cheap because it was during hurricane season, which did play a part in the holiday later on.
Yeah, I bet.
But it was just mammoth. I mean, it had an ice rink. I think it had 2 cinemas. One of the decks, you go down and you sort of come out in the elevators, and they've done it up to make it look like a high street. They've cobbled the floor and they've made shops inside to make it look like a street. It was so bizarre.
They're trying to make it look like land then inside. Well, what's the point if you want to go to sea to enjoy the sea and you end up on cobbled streets?
It's basically, sea travel for people who hate the ocean. They're so big, these things. They're, you're not designed to be able to feel seasick or anything, but once they start rolling, you can feel it a bit.
Back to the Icon of the Seas, the gargantuan one that we were first talking about. One of the things that struck many people looking at those pictures is how multicoloured it is.
Well, I think partly they want to go a bit younger. Cruise ships have a bit of a reputation of having an older clientele, and they want to attract families, and part of that is making it big, colourful, getting young people on board, and this water park is something for the kids to do while the adults basically eat and drink. That's the other thing I've got to say. When I was on the Mariner, it was just eating and drinking non-stop. You go down to these huge buffets where you can have anything you want, whenever. The Venus de Milo, that sculpture, the armless Greek sculpture?
Yes, that's right.
They had one of them made out of chilled butter.
Alex, there have been big debates in recent years in some ports around the world about the fact that they don't want these huge cruise ships to dock where they are. Where does that debate stand around the world at the moment?
It definitely seems to be more of a thing in, I would say, Mediterranean ports, partly because you're talking about old European cities who were not built with these things in mind. The Caribbean islands, again, it's similar really, but they stop off in different parts. One way that Royal Caribbean, this company's got a way around it, is buy an island. They own an island called Coco Cay, which is for their exclusive use. They dock up there and passengers go down and don't have those pesky locals getting in the way.
That was the BBC's Alex Rhodes. Still to come on the Global News Podcast. AI brings a Brazilian musical star back to life and stokes controversy.